I stood rooted to my driveway, coffee mug frozen halfway to my mouth, staring at the bare patch of concrete where my Ford F350 Super Duty was supposed to be parked. The familiar growl of that diesel engine that normally kicked in every morning at 6:30 had vanished along with the entire truck. Across the street, Nancy Sterling stood on her immaculate lawn, arms folded over the HOA president's sash she wore like it was Miss America regalia. Her narrow lips twisted into that smug little smirk that instantly made you pat your back pocket to be sure your wallet was still there. My name is David Vance, and I've been a general contractor pounding nails since before most people had flip phones. 6 months ago, I thought I'd made a solid life decision. I bought a house in Crestview Meadows, great neighborhood, solid schools for future kids, and only 15 minutes from most of my job sites. What the cheerful realtor somehow forgot to mention was that the homeowners association was run by a woman who made Kim Jong-un look laid back. From the moment I moved in, Nancy had a personal vendetta against my truck. She insisted the diesel engine violated some fuzzy noise rule, even though I'd checked it myself with a decibel meter, and it was well under the legal limit. Every single morning, she'd plant herself on her porch. The second I turned the key, scribbling on her clipboard like she was cataloging atrocities for The Hague. The woman literally used a stopwatch to time how long I let it idle while it warmed up. The first citation arrived exactly 2 weeks after closing. Excessive vehicle emissions in a residential zone. Absolute nonsense. My truck had passed California's smog check with flying colors. I answered politely, attached every certificate and test result, and figured that would shut it down. Yeah, I'm an optimist. The tickets kept rolling in on schedule. Commercial vehicle parked in residential driveway. Never mind that half the cul-de-sac rolled around in lifted Suburbans and dwarfed the size of army tanks. Noise disturbance during permitted hours, even though I never cranked it before 6:30 a.m., the exact minute the ordinance allowed. Aesthetic violation due to vehicle size. I actually laughed out loud at that one every time I fired back with documentation, measurements, and a growing level of barely polite frustration. I showed up to HOA meetings where Nancy would spend 20 solid minutes ranting about the diesel issue while everyone else checked their phones and sighed. One neighbor, a retired guy named George, finally stood up and announced that his dirt bike made more racket than my truck ever had. Nancy shut him down cold and wrote disruptive resident next to his name in the official minutes. Then came the Thursday morning that flipped everything upside down. I'd been up late finishing a kitchen remodel clear across town and accidentally slept through my alarm by 15 minutes. When I shuffled outside at 6:45, rubbing sleep from my eyes, my driveway was empty, except for a neon yellow slip fluttering under a non-existent windshield wiper. My truck was simply gone. The notice was from Apex Recovery. Vehicle removed for repeated HOA violations, retrieval fee. A casual $850. My hands started shaking, not from panic, but from a white-hot rage that felt like it could melt steel. This woman had effectively stolen the truck that paid my bills, the one I needed to haul tools and materials, the one that kept my whole business afloat. I called the tow yard immediately. The guy on the phone sounded half dead until I said, "Crestview Meadows." Then his tone went cagey. "Look, buddy, we just hook 'em where the HOA points. You got a problem. Let's talk to your board." When I asked for the signed tow authorization, he muttered something about checking with the boss and hung up on me. Next call. The police. The officer who showed up was decent enough. He listened, nodded, then explained it was a civil matter because the HOA claimed they had the right. He told me to read my covenants and maybe lawyer up. As he walked back to his cruiser, he added, "Off the record, we've been getting a lot of calls from your neighborhood lately. That stuck with me. I lost an entire workday and a $1,200 job poring over paperwork instead of swinging a hammer." The HOA bylaws were 73 pages of eye-watering legalese, but I read every damn line. Nowhere, not once, did it prohibit diesel engines. There were rules about boats, RVs, and trailers, sure, but nothing about what kind of fuel your daily driver ran on. Even better was the section on towing protocol. Any vehicle removal required a written 72-hour warning posted on the car, signed approval from at least 2 board members, and dated photographic proof of the exact violation. Nancy had done exactly none of that. She just picked up the phone, called her pal at Apex Recovery, and had my legally parked, legally registered property yanked out of my own driveway. I took photos, screenshots, timestamps, everything. Then I made an appointment with Amanda Hughes, an attorney who eats rogue HOAs for breakfast. She actually let out a low whistle when I slid my folder across her desk. "This is egregious, even for HOA horror stories," she said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "They broke at least 4 state statutes and their own rules. We're not just getting your truck back, David. We're going for blood." The demand letter Amanda drafted was a masterpiece. Page after page of cited violations, statutes, and case law, demanding immediate return of the vehicle, reimbursement for the tow fee, lost wages, and punitive damages that would make Nancy's eyes water. The cherry on top was the discovery request. Every email, text, and phone log between Nancy and the towing company, plus all board minutes that ever mentioned my truck or any diesel vehicle in the neighborhood. 2 days later, the HOA's attorney fired back a response. Their reply insisted the tow was fully justified for ongoing violations and community safety, then tried to scare me by threatening sanctions for filing a frameless, I think they meant frivolous, complaint. Amanda read it once and actually laughed out loud. "They just put in writing that they singled you out. Merry Christmas to us." What came next was pure poetry. Amanda had already filed a formal complaint with the State Department of Real Estate that oversees HOAs. Nancy's file was a greatest hits album. 3 prior harassment claims, 2 accusations of misusing HOA funds, and 1 for blatantly discriminatory rule enforcement. How she still had a gavel was anybody's guess. I also started knocking on doors, really talking to people for the first time. The floodgates opened. The Millers got cited because their 8-year-old drew hopscotch and sidewalk chalk on their own driveway. The Coopers were threatened with a $600 fine for hanging prayer flags during Diwali. A disabled vet on the corner got a violation because his wheelchair ramp was apparently half a shade off HOA beige. Everyone had a horror story. No one had ever pushed back, until now. Then my phone rang. Channel 4 News. Someone had sent them the whole saga. Sarah Jenkins, the reporter, smelled blood in the water, especially when she learned Apex Recovery was owned by Nancy's brother-in-law. Conflict of interest much? The segment aired Tuesday at 6. They filmed me standing in my empty driveway, looking justifiably pissed. Amanda calmly listing statute violations like she was reading a grocery list, and half the block finally venting on camera. The money shot. Nancy stepped onto her porch in full presidential sash, spotting the news truck, and sprinting back inside so fast her autumn wreath hit the welcome mat. Classic. 7 o'clock the next morning. Attorney called, voice dripping with newfound politeness, eager to resolve this amicable misunderstanding. Apex Recovery had already released my truck. No charge. Their lawyer apparently explained what Grand Theft Auto looks like when you're on camera, but I still wasn't satisfied. Mediation was set for the following Monday at Sullivan & Partners. I wore the only suit I own, the one I break out when I'm bidding hospitals. Amanda brought a PowerPoint that should be framed in a museum. Nancy showed up wearing her sash over a blazer, like it was body armor. The mediator, a retired judge, asked her, very politely, to take it off. Amanda dismantled them, piece by piece. Noise, here are time-stamped. decibel logs. Quieter than the HOA's own landscapers, emissions, current smog suits, and factory paperwork. Commercial vehicle. State law explicitly protects contractors' personal trucks. Then she dropped the brother-in-law bomb. The HOA lawyer literally face-planted into his palms. The mediator, Judge Harrison, looked like he was fighting off a grin with a stick. He finally spoke. This appears to be textbook selective enforcement and an undeniable conflict of interest. Translation: you're toast. The numbers started flying. Lost wages, tow fee, attorney fees, emotional distress, and punitive damages for the harassment campaign. Their lawyer tried to haggle. Amanda didn't budge. Final settlement, $10,000. Wired within 7 days. Money wasn't all. Judge Harrison strongly recommended that Nancy resign immediately unless the board faced personal liability lawsuits. Emergency board meeting that same night. I wasn't invited, but George texted me blow by blow. Nancy tried the "I'm protecting property values" routine. Nobody bought it anymore. They'd all seen themselves on the news, looking like hostages. The vote was 4-1 to remove her immediately. Nancy was the one. She apparently stood up, screamed that they couldn't do this after her 6 years of selfless leadership, and stormed out, kicking over a folding chair on her way. Martha, the treasurer, who'd never once spoken up, just said, "We need leadership, not litigation." Mic drop. My truck came home the next morning with a couple of new scratches I photographed for the file. The $10,000 check cleared a week later. I celebrated by installing a brand new exhaust system, quieter, cleaner, and more efficient than the factory ever made it. Petty? Maybe a little. 2 weeks after that, a for sale sign went up in Nancy's yard. A month later, the moving trucks came. I was pressure washing my truck in the driveway when her packed Prius rolled past one last time. She slowed, opened her mouth like she had something to say, then thought better of it and drove off. The new owners pulled in a week later with a lifted Cummins Ram 2500. That sounds like a freight train gargling. Gravel? Turns out the husband is a diesel mechanic with a mobile repair business. I told him the whole story over beers on his new front porch. He laughed so hard he had to put his bottle down. "So that's why the house was such a steal," he said, wiping his eyes. Sometimes justice rolls on 22-inch wheels and smells faintly of diesel. And to hear more sweet neighborhood justice stories, subscribe to HOA Conflicts for more.